Yeah. So, wonderful. So welcome to our talk on Martin Luther King and his I Have a Dream speech, and the connection between Martin Luther King's vision and social justice and Judaism. We know that there's a thread, a very strong, important thread of social justice going through Judaism. And all of you were around when when all this was happening, when the I Have a Dream speech was made, and when the march in Selma and all those things were happening. So this is a wonderful picture, and it's from, let's see, I think this was in Selma, and it was Martin Luther King. Oh gosh, sorry, my fingers, it's very hard to control things. And this is Rabbi Everett Gendler, who's holding the Torah, and this is Rabbi Joshua Heschel. So it shows that there was this link between our people and, the civil rights movement. And I love this picture. I remember about 3 years ago, before COVID, it was Martin Luther King Day, and I was at my congregation in Fauquier County, Virginia. And I showed this picture to my students and went over a bit of the I Have a Dream speech with them. And they had no idea. They'd never seen a picture like this with Black activists and a Torah and rabbis, and it was something totally new for them.
Do you want to do this?
So back in August 28th, 1963, Dr. Martin Luther King stood up there to give a speech at a rally that was to be for civil rights and job equality and racial equality. And I hadn't realized this, but what I found when I was doing some research, it says that Dr. Martin Luther King had originally prepared a short and rather formal recitation of the sufferings of African Americans attempting to realize their freedom in a society chained by discrimination. And so he gave this formal talk, and he was about to sit down when the gospel singer Mahalia Jackson called out, "Tell them about your dream, Martin, tell them about your dream." And so, encouraged by shouts from the audience, King drew upon some of his past talks, and the result became the landmark statement of civil rights in America, a dream of all people, of all races and colors and backgrounds, sharing in an America marked by freedom and democracy. So the speech that we know as I Have a Dream, which feels so carefully crafted and such, is almost like a pastiche of his previous talks, and just something that he was able to put together because he was trained in that and raised in that tradition of being a reverend, of being a pastor, where you learn to speak extemporaneously. And he had an excellent knowledge of the Hebrew Bible and the New Testament, and he was able to weave all that together in such a compelling way. I can't even imagine what it would be like to have talent like that. So what I wanted to share with you tonight is to go over little bits of this speech, I Have a Dream, and see where certain of his ideas, certain phrases were taken from the Torah, from Hebrew Bible. And there is, so the Hillel organization, many of you know Hillel from universities and colleges. Well, the Hillel International Organization puts together really wonderful educational materials. And one of the things they did was they took the I Have a Dream speech and they put it in a format so it looks like a page of Talmud. And I'm going to show you that. You won't be able to make out any words because it's too small to be able to see. Someday we'll be able to look at it in depth together in person, and everyone will have their own big copy. But for now, I want to show you what this looks like, because it's pretty cool. Where did I put it? Huh. Okay. It has disappeared. Wait a minute. I just need to open something. And here it is. Okay. I'm going to share. Let's see if I can make this a little bigger. Probably not. But so I don't expect you to be able to read this, but maybe you can make out that there's text in the middle and there's writing, like commentary, around the sides. And that's what a page of Talmud looks like. And the red in the middle of any lines that are highlighted in red, those are the phrases that were taken from Torah. And around the side is all the sources that these were from. So I can actually email this to people. If you're interested in having your own copy of this, I'm happy to send it to Susan or Steve, and they can send it out to everyone. And then you can look at it and look at pieces of it and really get, and really see what this is. But what we're going to do now is Susan found for me a copy of the I Have a Dream speech, and I highlighted things. And so we're going to go over the speech a little bit and look at the lines that are highlighted. And I will share with you the sources for these lines. Okay. I have a dream. Now, this already is from a dream is from a citation, is cited because in the Talmud, the Babylonian Talmud, Brachot 57b, so tractate Brachot, which is a tractate all about blessings, it says that a dream is 1/60th of prophecy. And I'm certain most of us can agree that Martin Luther King was definitely prophetic. We don't actually have prophets nowadays, but I think if we did, he would qualify as one of them. So he starts, I'm happy to join with you today in what will go down in history as the greatest demonstration for freedom in the history of our nation. 50 years ago, a great American in whose symbolic shadow we stand today signed the Emancipation Proclamation. This momentous decree came as a great beacon of hope to millions of slaves who had been seared in the flames of withering injustice. It came as a joyous daybreak to end the long night of their captivity. But 100 years later, the colored America is still not free. 100 years later, the life of the colored American is still sadly crippled by the manacle of segregation and the chains of discrimination. So this phrase here, joyous daybreak to end the long night of their captivity. The source for that is Talmud. It's also the Passover Haggadah. So Rabban Gamliel, he was the head of the Sanhedrin and he was like chief rabbi back in the days of Talmud. Rabban Gamliel would say that anyone who has not explained 3 things on Passover has not fulfilled his obligation, and they are Pesach, Matzah, and Maror. Pesach, because the omnipresent passed over our ancestors' houses in Egypt and did not slay the firstborn, our firstborn. Matzah, because our ancestors were redeemed from Egypt. Maror, bitter herbs, because the Egyptians embittered our ancestors' lives in Egypt. Therefore, we're obliged to thank, to sing to praise, to exalt, to glorify, to beautify, to bless, to offer, and to magnify the one who performed these miracles for our ancestors and us, who brought us from slavery to freedom, from despair to joy, from mourning to feasting. And here's part of the quote that is connected directly, and from darkness to great light, and from bondage to redemption, and let us say before the one, hallelujah. So he took this expression from darkness to great light and rejiggered it a bit to be from a joyous daybreak to end the long night. Now, if you have any questions, if someone could let me know, because I can't see everybody at the moment, or comments. Now, if we go through, he says, but we refuse to believe that the Bank of Justice is bankrupt. We refuse to believe that there are insufficient funds in the great vault of opportunity of this nation. So we have come to cash this check, a check that will give us upon demand the riches of freedom and security of justice. We have also come to this hallowed spot to remind America of the fierce urgency of now. This is not a time to engage in the luxury of cooling off or to take the tranquilizing drug of gradualism. So the fierce urgency of now is from Pirkei Avot, Ethics of Our Fathers, or Ethics of Our Sages. And I think you're going to recognize this quote. Hillel would say, if I am not for myself, who will be for me? If I am for myself alone, what am I? If not now, when? And Shammai answered, set time for Torah study, say little and do much, receive everyone with grace. So, if not now, when? And the fierce urgency of now. Now is the time to make the real promise of democracy. Now is the time to rise from the dark and desolate valley of segregation to the sunlit path of racial justice. Now is the time to lift our nation from the quicksand of racial injustice to the solid rock of brotherhood. Now is the time to make justice a reality for all God's children. And this, the God's children reference, actually is relevant to this week's Torah portion with the crossing of the sea. It's from Talmud. This first quote is from Talmud Tractate Megillah. When Israel was crossing the Red Sea, the ministering angels wanted to sing praises. God chastised them, saying, the works of my hands, in other words, the Egyptians, are about to be drowned. And here you are singing their praises. Here you are singing praises. This is a quote that's used very often in social justice work. And, you can understand God is saying all of humanity is my children. Everyone is my child. It doesn't matter the religion or the race or the ethnicity or anything like that. And God is saying, do not take joy in the downfall of your enemies. And how can I do that? Because they are all my children. And the source continues, and this is also, again, from Ethics of Our Fathers, Pirkei Avot. Rabbi Akiva would say, beloved is the human, for he was created in God's image. Excessive love is bestowed upon him because he was created in the image. As it is written, one who spills the blood of another, his blood should be spilled, for in the image of God was human made. So again, this is a reminder, right, that we're all created in God's image. And when we kill someone else, we are killing ourselves. We are shedding our own blood. We don't have the right to hurt someone else because we think they're less than, because we're all God's children. And then this quote, "No, we are not satisfied, and we will not be satisfied until justice rolls down like waters and righteousness like a mighty stream." I've always loved this quote. So, "And justice and righteousness will rejoice like water, like the river of Etan." And this is from the book of Amos, or Amos, the prophet. And another quote, Rabbi Eliezer said, "One who performs acts of righteousness and justice is greater than one who brings sacrifices to the temple, as it is written, and what is just is more desired by the Lord than sacrifice." And that's from Proverbs. He also said, "Acts of compassion are greater than acts of justice, as it is written, plant your seeds justly, but reap them with compassion." And that's from Hosea. When one plants, he may or may not eat from what he has planted, but once he reaps, he will surely be able to eat. And that's from the Talmud. So imagine a waterfall, and the water flowing down is the water of justice, and it waters the earth, and it encompasses all of us. I am not unmindful that some of you have come here out of your trials and tribulations. Some of you have come from areas where your quest for freedom left you battered by storms of persecutions and staggered by the winds of police brutality. You have been the veterans of creative suffering. Continue to work with the faith that unearned suffering is redemptive. So this idea that unearned suffering is redemptive, it's a bit of a problematic idea. And we can talk about this a bit afterwards if you'd like. So here's a quote. The first is from Jeremiah. "O Lord, you know, remember me and take thought of me. Avenge me on those who persecute me. Do not yield to your patience. Do not take me away. Consider how I have suffered on your account." And then this from the Talmud. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai said, "Three great gifts were given to Israel for their suffering: the Torah, the land of Israel, and the world to come." So this idea of the unearned suffering, that unearned suffering is redemptive, can be found actually throughout some of King's writings, and also throughout the writings of many philosophers and preachers throughout history. It is a bit problematic and troublesome, this idea of unearned suffering, and that when one suffers, it can be redemptive. But it is a tenet of many of our faiths. So then we get into the "I have a dream" section. And I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. I have a dream that one day out in the red hills of Georgia, the sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood. I have a dream that one day the state of Mississippi, a state sweltering with the heat of oppression, will be transformed into an oasis of freedom and justice. I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by their character. I have a dream today. I have a dream that one day every valley shall be engulfed, every hill shall be exalted, and every mountain shall be made low. The rough places will be made plains, and the crooked places will be made straight. And the glory of the Lord shall be revealed, and all flesh shall see it together. The rough places will be made plain. Let the rugged ground be made level and the ridges become a plain, from Isaiah. Let the rugged ground be made level. This is referring to the evil inclination in everyone. And the crooked places will be made straight. Rabbi Shimon ben Manasseh says, a crooked person has to be straight to begin with, and now has become crooked. That's from the Midrash on Genesis. And from Ecclesiastes, and the crooked will not be made straight, and that which is missing will not be counted. With this faith, we will be able to work together, to pray together, to struggle together, to go to jail together, to climb up for freedom together, knowing that we will be free one day. This will be the day when all of God's children will be able to sing with new meaning. My country, 'tis of thee, sweet land of liberty, of thee I sing. Land where my fathers died, land of the pilgrim's pride. From every mountainside, let freedom ring. Let freedom ring. Where does the word dror in Hebrew, which means liberty or freedom, come from? It comes from the word for transient, which is dayar, for he goes and sells his wares wherever he pleases. That's from one of our very, very old Torah and Talmud commentaries. It's called Midrash Yalkut Shimoni, and it's one of the earliest commentaries that we have. I love this idea that freedom, this idea is transient. It's not something stuck in the mud. It's not anchored in concrete. It's something that comes and goes as the peddler sells his wares from here and there and has the freedom to wander about. And if America is to be a great nation, this must become true. So let freedom ring from the hilltops of New Hampshire. Let freedom ring from the mighty mountains of New York. Let freedom ring from the heightening Alleghenies of Pennsylvania. Let freedom ring from the snow-capped Rockies of Colorado. Let freedom ring from the curvaceous slopes of California. But not only that, let freedom ring from the Stone Mountain of Georgia. Let freedom ring from every hill and molehill of Mississippi and every mountainside. When we let freedom ring, when we let it ring from every tenement and every hamlet, from every state and from every city, we will be able to speed up that day when all of God's children, Black men and white men, Jews and Gentiles, Protestants and Catholics, will be able to join hands and sing in the words of the old spiritual, free at last, free at last. Thank God Almighty, we are free at last. Free at last. Rabbi Shimon, the son of Gamliel, said, the world stands on three things: on justice, on truth, and on peace. As it is written, judge with truth, justice, and peace within your gates. Jean?
I find it interesting that his reference to the song, My Country, 'Tis of Thee, Sweet Land of Liberty, is a direct line from one of the major pieces that Marian Anderson sang when she sang at the Lincoln Memorial, when she was denied the right to sing at the Constitution Hall back in I think it was 41 or 42. No, it was 36, I think. Wow. I forget stuff, but that's something you never forget.
Yeah, I don't know, blows me away, I guess. I mean, it is just such an amazing thing that Martin Luther King, first of all, that such words, right, of beauty and intensity, and really core truth, right? There's nothing duplicitous about this. There's nothing that's being hidden. Like, he states right out this vision of a world where people are free, where people are equal, where there is no slavery, where no one can lord it over someone else, where children are able to be valued because of who they are. And he does it in such a way that he pulls from so many places. And references, as Jean said, he's referencing this a song that was sung back in an occasion, back in 1936. He had such a store of knowledge in his head.
This is very impressive, what you have done. For me, was not born in this country, and I love that speech, but what you brought up, the history, is very, very meaningful. Thank you.
You're welcome. That's the thing. This touches people no matter where we're from. But the most disturbing part, right, is that so much is still happening today, that so much of his vision hasn't been fulfilled yet, and for no good reason.
And now, in our country, this speech even has more meaning than ever when we are worried about our democracy.
Yes.
Oh, I'm so glad that you brought up all those points.
Oh, yeah, it felt, every time I read this, I get, in Hebrew, the word's miragesh, like emotional, right? It's exciting and it's emotional, and it touches inside of me. Because yes, he said the speech for the, I don't know, thousands, tens of thousands. I don't know how many people were there, but I know it was a lot. All the people in front of him, and for his fellow Black people. But he was really saying the speech for all of us. I mean, his work, when he would set his worked, yeah. And it wasn't, and if there's, remember there was one of his contemporaries, Medgar Evers. He, so there's a song called Medgar Evers' Lullaby. I don't know if you've ever heard it, but, and it's rather maudlin. And of course, I used to use that as one of the lullabies that I sang my children to sleep with when they were little, because I sang them to sleep with, old Hebrew songs from the Chalutzim, from the pioneers, and also with protest songs from the 60s. It's how my parents raised me. But in the Medgar Evers song, it ends with goes, bye bye my baby, I'll rock you to sleep. I'll sing you a sad song that might make you weep. Your daddy was walking along for some air, and the man in the bushes was waiting right there. That man killed your daddy and laughed while he died. Your daddy lay dying with tears in his eyes. He cried for the things that a man leaves undone, and he cried for the dreams that he had for his son. Now what will you do, son, when you are a man? Will you learn to be lonely and hate all you can, or will you try to be happy and try to believe that all men are slaves till their brothers are free?
Wow.
Not the nicest song to sing your children to bed, but it worked. Until one day they got old enough and they're like, Ima, why did you sing that song to us? I said, so you would know our history. But that line, I learned that song when I was a kid at overnight camp. and my counselor sang, play guitar and sang it around the bonfire. So, and that line at the end always stuck to me, for no man is free, for all men are slaves until their brothers are free.
That's pretty strong.
It is.
That's a good.
Well, I love the line where he says something about he won't stop until his 4 young children
Yeah.
are, free. Well, I don't think that's happened yet.
No.
We're a long ways away from that.
And that's why these words, it's such a beautiful thing that the Hillel organization decided to put this to a Daf Talmud and to raise up the references from our heritage that King would have known, because he was a very learned man, because it just really highlights that there's still such a long way to go. And every time I read it, my heart just beats faster when I see all those lines hoping for things that almost 60 years later still haven't come to pass. I read an article yesterday or last night, this morning. It was about 2 in the morning. You have insomnia, you read articles. And it was talking about what is happening to democracy in this country and how do we safeguard democracy. And interestingly, it used Israel as an example, because the current government in Israel is a unity government, and for the first time ever, it is a pastiche of Israeli society. You have Orthodox, you have Reform, you have Arabs, you have Muslims, you have secular people, you have Druze, any segment of society that you can think of, they're all part of this government, and it's working. It passed the first balanced budget for the country, actually the first budget for the country since 2018. It is looking at welfare, social reforms in the country. It's not pursuing political, of course it's political agendas, but partisan political agendas, like trying to annex the West Bank or how to deal with Palestinians. It's looking at talking with the Palestinians to try to better conditions for everyone. And it's really looking at being a country that takes people's needs into account and remains a democracy. And so this article, which I don't even think that the author was Jewish.
Was this in the Washington Post?
I don't think so. I'll
because
look.
There was an article last week, I don't remember which day.
Oh, was it?
It talked about the government in Israel.
So maybe that was the article and I was reading it late. It's possible. And so, and it said that that's what we need in America. Maybe we need to have, it talked about the next president cycle should be maybe a Biden-Cheney government, a Democratic president and a Republican vice president. Like, what would our government look like, and what could democracy look like if the people in government learned to cooperate and talk together, even those with diametrically opposed interests and ideas? That's really the only way to safeguard democracy.
This has happened in France, not this last 2 election, but a little while back, where they had a president of one particular party, and then he worked with somebody from a different party. It was like a marriage between the two. It was something new. It was tried a couple times, and I wish I would remember that this was a while back. But that made an impression that has never left me. that you could work with both.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, some states have that
Yeah.
because they elect their governor and lieutenant governor separately. I mean,
Yeah.
they're separate votes.
Yeah.
I know that it works any better.
Yeah.
But
But again, it's who was speaking? Please.
He wanted to have Lieberman as his vice presidential running mate. Never came to be.
Yeah. I mean, this reminds us that I was always told that we come into this world into a world, we're born into a particular world, a particular state of events. And our obligation is to leave this world a better place than the one we were born into. That it's part of our DNA. And it's what it means to be a Jew, to take on tikkun olam, repairing the world, or as I prefer to interpret tikkun olam, is to continue in the work of creation as God's partners. So God created the world in 6 days, rested on the 7th, and then stepped back a little bit. And on the 8th day, human beings took over. So ever since the 8th day, it's been our responsibility to create and fix and shape the world into the place that we want to live. Unfortunately, God didn't make it really easy for us. But so, any other? And the other thing that's interesting, and I think I mentioned it Friday night, I don't know. It's just this idea that this year, Martin Luther King Day and Tu B'Shvat fall on the same day, on the same Monday. And I think that's really I like to look at coincidences, and I think that's really nice, because what we need now is hope. Between the politics and between the pandemic and just our own lives, we all could use a dose of hope. Tu B'Shvat is a wonderful holiday of hope. We look at the cycle of creation and the cycle of growth. It's about the trees and the plants, and we eat from the 7 species of fruits from the land of Israel, and we think about the possibilities of the future. Are any of you familiar with the story of Honi, the circle maker? So, a really bad paraphrasing of it all, but so Honi was this gentleman who made circles. I really don't know how that was a thing, but Honi made circles. And there's a lot of stories about him, but the Tu B'Shvat related story is that he was walking along and he was planting carob seeds. Now a carob seed, or it's also known as St. John's bread, St. Peter's bread, St. John's bread. It's also known as that. So a carob tree takes 70 years to grow. And Honi was going about planting carob trees, planting the seeds. And then he got tired, so he leaned against a tree that was already grown and he fell asleep. When he woke up, it was 70 years later. He didn't know that at first. He woke up and he realized he'd taken a nap, and he looked around and he didn't recognize where he was because things looked different than what he remembered. And in one version of the story, these 2 youth come by and he asked them, who they are and such, and they said that this was their tree, their family's tree that Honi had fell asleep against. That 70 years ago, their grandfather had planted a seed, or their great-grandfather had planted a seed, and now their teenagers, and the tree is grown, and they were there to harvest some of the seeds in order to plant trees for the next generation. I will send you the story as well because it's much better than I just recited it. But this idea that we have to plant seeds that we will never see grow, but we're planting the seeds for the next generation. That's Tu B'Shvat. And when you couple that with Martin Luther King and the dreams that he had, not only for his people and for the people of the moment, but also for his children and children's children and all the people in the future, I think it's a beautiful pairing from both the social justice end to the end of ecology and taking care of our planet. So.
Well, the human species is doing a very good job of making its own self extinct, working hard at it. You know, the lack of willingness to cooperate for the greater good, it's taking its toll. We see it right this very minute around us with how people are reacting to COVID in this country.
Yeah.
There are those people who are very careful to take care of things, to take care of themselves, to look after their neighbor, to wear the mask, to get the shot, etc. There are those people who disdain this entire idea because it's, it impacts their so-called personal freedoms. So, I don't, frankly, I don't have a lot of hope for our species unless we can finally get ourselves together and cooperate. We're the only species on this planet that goes out hunting one another. This is, there's not another species on this planet that looks to go out and kill its own type. It's very, very, depressing to think of it in those terms.
Well, it's one of the, I figured no matter what religion I would have been born into, I would feel that that was the best religion because that would be what I know. But for me, I think there's so many beautiful things about Judaism, so many frustrating things, mind you, but so many beautiful things. And part of it is that so much of what we do, of the prayers that we say, of the mitzvot, of the obligations that we have are set in place, and they remind us that we are not island. Each of us is not our own island, that we're part of we're part of a community, and we're part of a species, and we're part of the population of a planet, and that we're all interconnected. And that what we do for ourselves also has to be good for other people. Now, granted, I can show you parts of Talmud and Torah that don't sound that way, but again, Judaism is an evolving civilization, and as time, all of our scripture and all of our writings, they were written by people who are products of the time in which they were born. But that doesn't mean we should discount them. It just means we have to look at them and say, okay, I can take this lesson, or this was what was happening then, but we know now that just because someone isn't part of our clan doesn't mean that they're so other that we should treat them as subhuman. But so much of what we do is about being in community. And if we can remember that, it helps us to be a little less selfish, maybe. Now, how do we translate that into the whole world? I don't know. But it takes a village or a planet to save a planet. Whoa, bad philosophy. And we don't even have glasses of wine with us right now. Next time.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so much.
Does anyone have a yurt site or the desire to say Kaddish, since we have a minyan? No. Okay. at every program that I do, I bring, I make sure I have a copy of Kaddish available to screen share in case there's someone who has a yurt site or is in mourning, or someone who feels moved to say Kaddish. And if you come to a program that I do and I forget, and you desire to say Kaddish, say, Rabbi, can we say Kaddish before we go? Because we should never pass up the opportunity of a minyan. So I was teaching I have a student, I think he's 13 already. We're going to do his bar mitzvah in August. And I've been working with him for about 4 years now. And so today we talked about what does it mean to be a bar mitzvah, an adult Jew, and what does it mean to be part of a minyan. And we particularly were talking about the obligation and the honor, the kavod, of being able to be part of a minyan for someone to say Kaddish. Because that's something that you can't do until you're bar or bat mitzvah. And it's something that reminds you that you are part of a people who look out for each other. So I always like that part, explaining that part. So if there are no more comments, I am going to go to sleep. And I want to thank you all for coming.
Good
I
evening.
feel it's
Thank you.
so
Thank you.
important to talk
And-
about these things.
Robert,
thank
thank you
you.
so much for
Thank you.
presenting this.
Yeah,
Thank you.
it was very
you.
meaningful.
It
And
was-
I'll send Susan like a copy of the PDF that I shared, and maybe the story of Honi, and a couple other things that maybe you could send out in a mailing next time you do a mailing, Susan.
I will, absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank
Good night,
you.
Thank you so
everyone.
much.
Thank you.
Thank
you.
Good night.
Bye.
Thank you.
Be well.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
It meant a lot to me. Bye. Bye. Okay.